I like that attitude. I love Aussies.
Okay, here we go. 3, 2, 1. Hello and welcome back. Today I'm very excited to be joined by Mark Victor Hansen and Crystal Hansen. Welcome to the show.
Delighted to be with you, Ed.
So happy to be here.
My great pleasure. And the theme of today is, well, we can start talking about your book. Why don't, rather than me talk about your book, why don't both of you introduce your book to the world?
Okay, we wrote a book. Obviously, I've sold 500 million books with the Phil series. I've been #1 59 times in a row. And you say, well, why do you need another book? Well, Crystal and I have traveled all over the world, 80 countries, and we've seen everybody. And we've met a lot of wonderful, well-educated, talented, likable people. But the difference between those who succeed and those who do not is one talent, one only, and that's, do they know how to ask? And it's the bridge from your dreams to your destiny. And our sub-belief is that everybody's got a destiny, Ed. And the goal is to discover it. And because we're all in lockdown at some level or another, government-imposed sequestration, we're saying, hey, wait a second. This is the ideal time to start thinking and asking. And we're saying, look, there's 3 kinds of ask. Ask yourself, ask others, and ask God. And we can go deep on that when you're ready.
Yeah, I mean, look, brilliant, because I'm a transformational coach. So I coach people exactly the subject matter or the themes, like Jack, you know, it's a similar process. We learn from thousands of years of teaching and we just interpret it and share it in our way. But one of the, I think the most powerful things that we can teach anybody is asking the right. I mean, to me, it's the fundamental. The first step of any transformational journey is accountability. We are responsible for our own lives and our destiny and our choices. But curiosity is the key to life, right? And curiosity is the power of asking questions. And so, can we go much deeper into that, because it affects so many different areas of life. You know, questions we ask ourselves internally and questions we ask externally. And obviously, I know that you both have very deep spiritual paths as well. And hence, you know, we can't even get into Chicken Soup for the Soul without being spiritual. We are spiritual beings.
But talk about the soul, the spark of life energy.
Yeah, and also questioning the questions we ask ourselves. So maybe we can start with that. What about how in this state that we're in, how do we ask better questions of ourselves?
Okay, so, you know, when we're stuck, we say the easiest and really the only way to get ourselves out of our stuckness is to start asking ourselves questions. And it's almost like you can't go wrong, because, you know, for every personal crisis Mark and I have been through, when we started writing the book, we realized we found our way out through asking questions. And I just want to share a little story of mine. When I was, one of the biggest personal crises I went through was when I was very young. I was 21 years old, Ed, and high school was easy for me. I accelerated my curriculum. I graduated when I was age 16 and married a guy 5 years older than me who couldn't live without me. And then 2.5 years later, I find myself in a city by myself, brand new city, divorced, baby on my hip, and absolutely no idea how I'm going to support myself. And the only thing I could think of was to apply for food stamps. So I applied for those food stamps, went to the grocery store for the first time. And as I was standing there in line, getting ready to turn those over to the cashier, I had this epiphany, and this huge question dropped into my mind. First of all, it was, how did I get here? And the second question was, are you doing everything you can to get out of this, or are you taking the easy way out? And I knew the second that question popped into my head, I knew the answer. I knew I wasn't doing everything I could. I knew I wasn't tapping into my own resources. And this all happened in this nanosecond. It was like I felt this spotlight over my head of revelation and realization. As I was turning those stamps over to the cashier, I had so much conviction in my heart. I was saying to myself, she didn't know I was thinking this, but I was saying, this will never happen again. This will be my last time. This will not be my future. So I went home and I kept asking questions. You know, every question I could think of. How can I go to work tomorrow? Where can I find a job tomorrow? How can I get someone to pay me tomorrow? So I registered for temporary service agents. I'd heard, about Kelly Services. It's a temporary service agent. Registered for that, right?
Yeah.
And it was pretty simple. The process, fill out your qualifications. They'll start calling you for jobs. Well, they started calling me and asking me if I wanted this job or that job. I could say yes or no. And started doing some work for them, and then realized there were 2 other temporary service agencies. So I said, I didn't see any rules that I couldn't apply for all 3. So I did. This way I had a better selection of jobs coming at me. So I would naturally pick the best ones. And I started working for attorneys, at the filling in for people. I started working at conventions, doing sales, setting up booths at malls, doing all kinds of fun things. And I started learning something about myself. I learned that I really like business. I learned that I was pretty good at it. I learned that I really liked sales. And I learned that I really like being around people and working with people. And so I decided to put myself through real estate school. A year and a half from that time, well, at the same time, several people had approached me and said, you should do some modeling. So I decided to approach the modeling agencies. I asked them if they would sign me. And fortunately, the bigger one in our valley did. So started doing some television commercials and getting paid residuals because they went national. So literally a year and a half after that moment, when I was turning over those food stamps, I was working for the biggest home builder in our valley. I became the #1 realtor for our company, and I was getting paid these residuals, which paid my insurance benefits for myself and my son, because you had to join Screen Actors Guild if you were booking so much in residuals every month. So I often thought back about that moment, and it became so pivotal for me to rely on that experience and that information. Those questions changed my life dramatically, caused a huge pivot. And they were tough questions, but it wasn't just the question that I asked, are you doing everything you can, Crystal, to get out of this situation? It was being able to answer it honestly. And I think sometimes that's the hardest thing for us as human beings. We have to accept the challenge to ask the questions and answer them honestly. I knew I wasn't doing everything I could, which gave me an opportunity. Because if I started doing everything I could, I decided that's the only way forward. And so in this way, that's what asking does. That's why we say asking becomes literally the bridge from your dreams to your destiny, because with every question you ask, you'll get an idea, a solution, a new understanding. And that takes you the next step forward, the next step forward. And suddenly you see yourself moving from your dreams and your desires to your destiny. It's a magical process.
Yeah, no, it's wonderful. There are so many places we can go there. One of the things that I like to say to the people I work with is the pain that you feel today is always far greater than the pain of the change that you fear.
Yeah.
Bingo.
Oh yeah.
Right. And to your point, Crystal, we ask the questions, but we've also got to take the action. And I think, Mark, here, it's something to look at is when you ask those questions, how did I get here? The point for you, and I'm sure you probably went through this, but this is, you got out of it, is many people, particularly if you're a high achiever and high performer, and I work with many high achievers, is their reflective question is, how on earth did I get to this place? I am better than this. In other words, there becomes a point of entitlement, and that is where the ego kicks in and destroys the bridge. So would you like to sort of give some thought on that?
I do. By the way, this is the first time in any podcast that we've given the thought to this. And let me just tell you, we not only did we write everything we knew about asking, because we got a lot of volume in our thinking and read voluminously, met everybody, but we interviewed 26 superstars. The world's biggest bankruptcy attorney, who happens to be a very compassionate guy and a very close friend of ours, we interviewed about just that, Bill LaBelle. And he's dealing with people that have titanic, they'll probably not be gigantic egos. I mean, I am worth $1 billion, Ed. What do you mean I'm going bankrupt?
Right.
I'm with an idiot attorney now.
I used to be an attorney as well.
So you understand, and I hope you don't mind the voices, but that's what he did.
I understand, yeah.
The point is, he said, he first of all tells the wife, look, wife, you're going to get attacked. It's not because he has changed. It's because he's been disleveled, because he's doing $300 million bankruptcies and now think they're $1 billion. But they have 100 million, but they owe, and they've personally signed an 800 million. So their SOL, situation is out of luck at a very high level. But every one of them is still beating on their chest because they said, look, I've always solved the problem. I know how to solve problems. I'm a problem solver. But they don't understand there's a time thing here. And you say, look, you don't want to hire me. You know, you're going to be in more problem, because he bails them out, because he has them. He does very strategic questions. And until you just ask that, and I'm glad that you're an attorney, I'm glad you're a transformational coach, I'm glad you see, and what the truth is, Bill LaBelle, who's so close to us, you can't believe it. We love this guy. Our thinking, like yours and ours, is the same. He is trying to help transform these people at the height of pain and saying, hey, look, you're going to cause a lot of pain to everybody around you because your ego thinks you can mow over everybody.
Yeah, it's staggering. I remember, and it's you know, one of the biggest obstacles we have, because they're either attachment, aversion, or ignorance. Those are the three. But I remember my meditation teacher telling me a while ago, and he's English, like boarding school, like me, but he's been a monk for 10 years. He never took the robes, but he went around Southeast Asia and became a monk. But I remember him saying to me to exactly this point. He was explaining about ego and about reality, and he was explaining this story. So just imagine, I know visualization, you've also written a book on it, and I'm a big fan of visualizing. So he said, just imagine this, you're this person, man or woman, you're sitting on your huge boat in the Caribbean, and it's a beautiful day, and there's a wonderful island in front of you, and there's, you know, beautiful clear water, dolphins are popping up, and you have this beautiful lover by your side. And you've got your cocktail, and life is wonderful. You're just an incredibly powerful, superior being, and you feel wonderful about yourself, right? and like, you know, 100 meters away, there's like the old man in the sea in his rickety old fishing boat, and he's got his straw hat with a hole in it, and he's just very, very serenely fishing away. And, you know, a couple of minutes later, the valet comes and passes in the phone, and he's going white, and he's screaming down the phone, probably to your friend, Bill, and saying, well, what are you talking about? And he comes off the phone, and the wife, the girlfriend or the lover or whoever it is, boyfriend, husband, says, what's going on? I said, well, we're in a Ponzi scheme, and this boat is now no longer ours, and we have nothing. It's all gone. Right, it's all gone, and he's staring at this beautiful island, drained, and of course the lover has disappeared already on the. You know, they've gone.
Back to shore.
They're swimming back to shore, and he's in a world of chaos. But the view is the same, and the old man in the sea is still doing his thing, and it's the different lens we look through. So the exterior beauty is just that, unless we hold it inside, it's a completely academic.
Well, yeah, that's so true. And it's interesting because I always say, as a transformational life coach, clinical hypnotherapist, you know, life is absolutely created from the inside out. You know, most people are looking out there somewhere thinking that is life, and it's coming at them and it's happening to them, and they're ducking and dodging and trying to keep the balls up in the air. But really, that's truly not the reality. The reality is we are creating our entire life experience from the inside out. And once you recognize that, it's such a beautiful thing, but it requires taking this time to do this retrospective journey, to ask yourself the right questions, to be committed to this, and really to realize what's getting in the way of you becoming a better asker in life. And in the book, we talk about the 7 roadblocks to asking. And this has a little bit to do with the ego part that you were just mentioning, because every single person that we know has at least one of these roadblocks, if not more. Yeah. You know, it's things like unworthiness, naivete, doubt, just fear, you know, the sheer terror of rejection, pattern paralysis, disconnection, all of those things, and excuses. And we say, like, for the excuses one, it's really comes down to a lot of stubborn pride, like somebody who really needs help and really could benefit by asking someone. And instead of asking or getting some advice or getting some counsel or whatever, they go, I don't need that. You know, I have the answers, kind of that I know everything. And so it's incredible for us to see how many people will pass by opportunities or cause themselves such turmoil and discomfort because they know everything. They will not ask. Don't try to tell them. You know, And it's funny, the example we use in the book happens to be Mark's brother, because about the time we were writing this book, we had the most interesting experience, and I'll let Mark tell you because it's a great story about that.
My big brother's 11 years older than me and sort of lives in a different time zone. And he went panning gold. Like, he needs to do that. He did really well in business. So, but with one of his best friends in Alaska, he says, I got to fly through there to get back to Tennessee where he's retired. And he stays at our house for a couple of days, and then we have a great time. We believe it or not, we carve a bow and arrow and all that stuff, because he and I used to be great archers. And I said, okay, what are you going to leave? He said, at 6 o'clock tomorrow. So we get up at 4 o'clock, take him to the airport. I said, you know how to get to the gate? He said, I got it wired. The guy is so stubborn that he's not willing to ask his little brother, because I'm a proud man. Now, my assumption, remember, I've traveled for 44 years, 250,000 miles a year, talking all over the world, Australia, everywhere. And I assume everyone's sort of got airport protocol memorized.
Yeah.
Well, late in the afternoon, I call up and his daughter answers the phone. And I said, Jody, is Dad home? And my brother? And she said, didn't you know? I had goosebumps telling you. I said, didn't I know what? He's still in the airport. He's been there 13 hours because you just dropped him off. I said, Jody, I dropped him off. He had an hour and a half. How in the hell could he miss it? He knew what the gate was. All you got to do is go to the gate. But his wife had just died, and she dragged him through the airport. I love Priscilla's wife and him, but it never dawned on me that he never learned airport protocol. He was afraid to ask we have people wearing pink coats in our airport in Phoenix, and he wouldn't ask anyone because he's too proud. I'm really a well-educated man. I'm sophisticated. I've been a successful businessman. I am too proud to ask. So I'll sit my ass here for 13 hours and miss the plane.
Seriously.
I said, Jody, if he called, I would have gone back and picked him up. I'm 10 minutes from the airport. What the hell is he doing? Not calling me. He's got a cell phone.
Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't even believe that could happen.
Well, also, sadly, the airport doesn't close, so no one's going to try and kick him out, and then he's got to do something about it. He can sit there for days, right?
That's the sad thing.
That's a Tom Hanks movie. You got stuck in your country.
Yeah, he gets stuck in
the airport. Yeah. I'll never leave, and nobody knows.
But the thing is, it's I mean, we can have a laugh about it, but I can only imagine internally the frustration and turmoil that he would have felt sitting there for that long, wondering what on earth is going on. That can't be a pleasant place to be at.
No one wants to sit in an airport. It's miserable. And he just, come back from this huge trip. Had a great time, but he was starting to get a little cold. So, sitting there all those hours and refusing to ask anyone's help, refusing to call us and ask for help, refusing when Mark asked them the first time, do you need help? No, I don't.
I would have walked him to the gate.
Of course he would have. But the thing of it is, the result of that, the net result, he didn't get home till like in the middle of the night or close to the next morning. And the next day he started coming down with a little bit of pneumonia. So it's just an example of something that happens in everyday life. But we know that in his case, it's happened again and again in his life. And there were times he could have avoided so much pain, turmoil, trouble, just by reaching out, just by, being able to lean on another human being and stop acting like you have all the answers, that you're supposed to have all the answers, that you're just an island out there that, is unfailing in your ability to deliver, or execute life. No one has that ability. And so to be able to lean on one another and ask things is so important.
Well, I think that's one of the key failings of leadership that we see, doesn't matter whether it's politics or CEOs or anywhere in the world, is this belief that the CEO needs to have all the answers, because we're human. You can't have, and that's why we hire experts. And that goes back to asking the question. I don't have the answer. I need help. But there's another element to that, which is those who ask all the right questions and they ask for help all the time. And I've coached people like this. I've consulted to organizations like this, but they actually don't want any of your help at all. What they want to do is hire you to say that they've hired the coach or the consultant, but actually they already have their agenda and you're just a pawn in the agenda. So I don't work with people like that anymore, but it's an important part of this process, right? That asking for help, but actually having no intention of taking it or listening, because listening is the other side to asking, right?
Listening is the other side. And that goes for what I was talking about in my own case, like listening to the answers and being honest about the answers for yourself or others. When they're giving you great advice, you're asking and you get a great answer. Are you willing to listen to it? Are you willing to take that track that will lead you to a better place? Such an important point.
So let me just add to that and say, hitchhiking on exactly what you were saying. One of the stories we have is one of the greatest black female singers of all time. Sammy Davis Jr. said she was better than Frank Sinatra, and that is Miss Della Reese. I think you'd remember some of her music when you were a little kid. But Della Reese is on Johnny Carson's show and has an enormous aneurysm, a brain blow up. Goes to the medical doctor in Beverly Hills, and because she's the #1 star at the time, you know, they're saying, well, you got to sign, your estate will not sue my estate. God forbid you die. She said, you guys are so negative. Her son comes in, who's a psychiatrist, said, look, you're saying it's because my mom's overweight. She's always been overweight. She has never been skinny. So finally, she hits on the right question, Ed. She says, look, I'm going to pray on this. You guys all get out of here. She prays and says, God, give me somebody that would really know an answer and that can ask right. The guy walking by the room comes by and says, hi, Miss Reese. I'm the second best guy that does neurosurgery in the world. She said, whoa, stop there. Who is the best? I didn't ask that question. Said, oh, it's my teacher up in Toronto, Canada. And so she talks to him, keeps asking questions, says, here's a phone. You just dial him up and get me in there. She goes in the next morning at 7:30. This guy comes in whistling, singing, says, Miss Reese, I'm your biggest fan. This operation is going to be a piece of cake. This aneurysm is no slowdown. In 2 weeks, you're going to be back up and singing in front of giant audiences. Didn't know then that she was going to do Touched by an Angel and a lot of movies and all this other stuff. And, you know, she had one of the biggest churches in LA. She had me talk there a ton of times. And she was one of our great, and always sang before I talk, which is sort of amazing. You know, they have the world's best black female singer at the time, sort of like Whitney Houston was, you know, singing. It just, but she said, I learned that from now on, I'm asking, who the hell's the best? I'm going to him or her.
Yeah. And you know what, and there's a bit of a conundrum there, right? Because I've always thought, why go and, if you want help, go and get the best person on the planet to help you solve your problem, right?
Right.
And that's what we would naturally do. But then it sort of assumes that 7.79 billion of them are useless, which is not, which I'm not sure is a bit scary, isn't it?
But that's exactly where we are right now. Let's go back 4 or 5 questions ago. You were asking about leadership and saying a lot of leadership's failing. We're saying that you've got to be a good self-leader to lead anyone else. And each one of us has got to learn how to ask the questions, be a great self-leader. So we lead, first of all, ourselves, then our spouse, then our family, then our city, state, country, and then the world. And I don't know anyone else trying to do that right now, except what I want to do is put together all the podcasters and say, hey, look, we really got to help. Let's call it 8 billion. We'll make it easy, right? Because I really think a lot of your neighbors a little north of you lie about their population.
Probably.
I can disagree about that.
They're not listening, so don't worry about it.
You can call it like it is, right?
So, and by the way, I'm so glad you're willing to have fun with this, because it's a big problem, but I think you'd agree with self-leadership, wouldn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the first rule of thumb, in fact, the only rule for life I have is be kind to yourself first and then be kind to others.
I love that.
Totally spiritual, and I see you're wearing even beads that would make the Dalai Lama, who I've been with, happy.
Yeah, no, I do like my beads. These are actually from Indonesia. They're from the sacred traditions, and they're scented, and they're sort of worth more than their weight in gold. They're very light, but they're meant to ward off evil spirits. That's the
no bad juju
Very
next to
cool.
Ed.
no bad juju. No, I've had bad juju in Indonesia. I don't want bad juju in Australia. That's
No. I don't want bad juju anywhere in the world.
We don't want it anywhere at all. But yeah, no, I think, and that goes back to that very first point we made, which is it's about accountability. And I think the whole entitlement and the poor leadership comes from people who are not prepared to listen. They're not prepared to accept, as Crystal says, you know, you're a very smart, intelligent young woman, accelerated learning, and yet you had yourself in a complete hole. And you could have just said, this shouldn't be happening to me. Someone needs to go and fix it for me. And you never would have come out of it. But you didn't. You accept that as a human being, I'm here. It's real. It's now. I need to do something about it. And I think that's where the difference with our coaching is, when people come in saying, I do need help. Now, some of them aren't quite ready to listen. That's okay.
Right.
Because that we can sow the seeds and they might come back, but at least they're beginning to realize that what they've been doing isn't working. And when they know that, that's when they want the help.
Right. That awareness is key, as we all know, to starting. That's the starting gate right there. It's that awareness that this isn't working. I need to be open to something new. I need to start looking at this. And that's why we have the 7 roadblocks to asking in there. Like, just being aware that some of these might be your roadblocks, and then reading the stories of other people, because as you know, Ed, stories are metaphors for our own lives, and metaphors are patterns and our brain recognizes these patterns. That's why stories are so powerful in our lives, because we immediately are able to sort of implement that pattern, even though we didn't actually go through that story. The pattern becomes very real because we're experiencing the emotion with the person who experienced that story that we're reading or learning about. And I believe that stories are one of the easiest way to accelerate our learning. We have beautiful stories in there about that. But also what you're talking about is we have a section called Prepare to be a Good Asker. And this is really an important part of this journey, because you can't just sit back and ask and then expect somebody, universe, here I am on the couch with my blankie, go ahead and deliver, right? There's a way you need to prepare, and that is, number one, first thing is belief. You need to believe that your answers are out there for you, and you need to believe that you have the right. Oh, that looks like a cute girl.
Yeah, she's come. She wants to take the cable to my laptop, which she can't do, darling. And secondly, she wants the dog, who I think's in here. You'll have to wait, darling. And can you shut the door, please? Because I want to teach them to be naturally curious. So the little one just wants to come in and get stuff. My older daughter, who's around somewhere, she likes to come and ask questions. She'll say, "Who's coming on the show?" And she likes scientists and environmentalists, and she wants to come and ask them. So I always encourage that. I think it's what a great medium for them to explore.
Exactly, and the real thing. I think it's wonderful that you allow them to do that, and I love it. But just back to that for a second, preparing to be a good asker, it takes belief. Number one, you need to decide you're going to believe that those answers are, and you're not going to stop till you get them, and believe you deserve the answers. Number two, action. Action is the second part of preparation. You've got to sort of get moving in the area that you desire, find out about it. You got to put yourself physically, mentally, emotionally into that area, sort of jump into the quantum soup, because if you don't put yourself into action, nothing's going to change. That's part of our human physical experience. So taking action around the question and answer journey that you're going through. And then, of course, visualization is the third one, because, the power of visualization is so amazing in being able to help you shape your ultimate vision for what you want in life. And a lot of times our logical brain will block that, because it starts giving you all the reasons, all the ABs, 1, 2, 3, ABC, why you can't do this or can't have that. But if you could go into that quiet space that we promote, I do it through hypnotherapy, guided visualization, meditation, whatever it is, and imagine your ultimate vision. What is it, whether it's relationship, family, career, ultimate thing that you see in your life, you see yourself, and put the detail and the richness, try to feel the emotions of it, and then engineer that backwards, You're
right, it's feeling it. I just say, yeah. I'm not interested. Logic brain does strategy, heart does everything else. And people have to come out of their logic brain into their heart center, into their sentient feeling self. And as you rightly say, you can't experience the visualization and the destiny unless you can feel it. Thinking it is irrelevant. Doesn't matter. We can think anything. The logic brain can manipulate anything you want it to do. The heart can't really manipulate emotions.
Yeah. Boy, that's true. Isn't that true? That is a great point. So it's pulling those two together in your visualization, bringing the emotion in. And that's what we say. Imagine what it feels like. Feel the joy. So if I want to be the greatest commercial real estate salesperson in the world, I need to go into my visualization and see myself working with the highest power clients that I desire to work with. I need to see myself celebrating and toasting over a glass of wine because we just signed the deal that I wanted to, sell and sign, and also visualizing that this person is happy, because part of that you need to make sure your value equation is in balance, that you're providing value for what you're expecting in return.
Well, that's a very good point. And what about, Mark, what about asking questions of the universe, manifesting, and then not sabotaging that? Because we can trash the manifestation, can't we?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, what we're discovering is that the reason we said ask is because you got to ask and keep asking until universe tests you to see if you really believe it. If you had Jack on, we got to, and by the way, I'm the salesman. Jack's a third in his class Harvard intellectual who went to prep school like you did. I did not do that. So I couldn't have gotten to teach at Harvard, but or go to Harvard. I mean, anyhow, so we visited. Anyhow, so when we got turned down by 144 people, they do pink slips, right? And I thought, what are they trying to do? They're trying to go to the heart and say, hey, you're a schmuck and you're a bad writer and we don't like you and this isn't going to make it. But now don't feel bad, but here's your pink slip. And I'm like, anyhow, so we went through, and then the 145th, we finally got to do it. So everyone's got to learn to ask repetitively, feel good about it. And I'd interviewed the 101 best-selling authors, not about how to write. I've been writing since I was 16 fairly effectively, I think. But I got good editors like her and Jack. But the fact of the matter is I interviewed everybody like Scott Peck, who went to Harvard with Jack. He was 58 weeks, #1. We took his New York Times, whited it out, and put Mark and Jack, Chicken Soup and Soul, put it on my mirror at my house, Jack's house, my office, Jack's office. And we put flowers around it. We made it, back to what she said, emotional, colorful, big. So we knew we were going to be #1 before we were #1. And then I wrote all those crazy goals, like we sell 1.5 million in a year and a half. And our publishers all went, oh, God, if you guys just sold 20,000, we'd be happy. And then I said, no. Then I'm going to sell 5 million. Then I'm going to sell 15 million. Then I'm going to, and everyone said, well, you can't do that. And now we're 500 million books up. But the other thing I wanted to do, just as a side note, because you're talking about heart, and you love your daughter so much. In our blended family, we have 5 kids, but one of my daughters, who just graduated second in her university class out of 38,000 kids at UCI, used to sit on my lap and have me do all the interviews on Chicken Soup for the Soul. And she memorized all the stories, like, I wish I had a brother like that, or Bobsy, or whatever. And the guys would say, well, can you tell that story? And I said, I've got a 6-year-old sitting on my lap. Can she tell it? And then finally we get to, her dream was to get, if you remember Nickelodeon. Yeah. Well, they slime kids, and she thought that'd be the biggest thing in life. So we go talk to 2 million people, and now the guy says, Melanie, you're 6 years old, and you're going to talk 2 million people. She immediately froze. She got scared for no reason. She'd done this story all the time. But she says, listen to you. I know you're scaring me because I got to go talk to 2 million people. But then that afternoon, she said, I'm going to get slimed, and that's what's important in life.
Well, that's the thing. They're kids, right? So they see it totally different. And to be honest, my daughter Viva, who likes she wants to work with planet or the ocean or something. And the only person she really wants me to have on the show is David Attenborough. It's like, he's quite tricky to get on. He's 94 years old. Right?
By the way, I met him when I was in graduate
Okay.
school. He was doing a movie on my teacher. I was in grad school 7 years because I was slow, with Buckminster Fuller. And
I know.
Yeah, and Bucky's friend was Attenborough, and Bucky had written, I hope this isn't too esoteric for your audiences, but Bucky, when I heard him the first time, I'm going to be a doctor of physiology, and then the head of physiology that was working on NASA with Bucky said, you got to go hear the smartest guy on the planet. And I said, no, that's you, Al, Dr. Alfred Richardson. And Al said, and he and I are best friends because I took every class he had, helped him in the labs, did everything. We go to see this. There's 5,000 kids. We're in the front row because we got a VIP seat. Bucky says we're going to talk about cosmogony, cosmology, epistemology, synergetic, energetic. I'm so sophomoric. I thought I was smart. I don't know one word this guy's saying. I begged Bucky to let me work with him, and then I, learned all this stuff and did pretty well, thank God. But it just, it is amazing that great minds exist, and so I hope you get Attenborough on. We've watched all of his planet stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I'm trying to pull the levers there. But the interesting thing about Buckminster Fuller and Buckyballs, I had a guy on the show who is the largest producer of this thing called Carbon 60. Have you come across Carbon 60?
You had Marshall Thurber?
No, this guy is the founder of SES Research. So in the Paris clinical trial they did using C60 on rats, his company was the one who manufactured the C60. And I think I think, was it Cliff High's the one who had it on YouTube, was promoting it. But so he's a scientist and he's also a podcaster, but he's ultimately a scientist. So no one really knows him, but he has the biggest producer of carbon-60 on the planet. And he was explaining to me about the buckyballs and how it's so I was curious about that, but also curious to know, you come from a very scientific background.
Yeah.
So in the world that I work, and I think the world that Crystal probably works in as well, we like the experiential side. And in fact, I prefer the experiential side, but I've also realized that if I'm going to work in the Western world, I need to know the science. So my grandfather he was a professor of neurology. He had his own hospital. So I'm a big fan of neuroscience because that informs us. It's easy to explain to people. But how important, in all of your writing that I've seen, Chicken Soup for the Soul and all the other books, it's experiential, but you are a scientist, of course. So where's the balance in there?
Well, first of all, one of our best friends is America's best neurosurgeon, which is Dr. Ben Carson, 15,000 pediatric neurosurgeons, and Ben's very close. But Ben, we've had dinner with him a bunch of times, breakfast, his house, all that stuff. And you're both right brain and old brain. And what Bucky used to teach is that you're a whole brain, right? And he said the trouble with the universe is that you go to university to study universe, but then they break it up and they screw it up by going to biology and chemistry and all this stuff, and you miss universe. And that's why Bucky and Attenborough are trying to say, hey, look, and Attenborough has such an ingratiating voice. Holy cow. You're supposed to, I got to spend, when Bucky was late, he let me take all these guys on tours, to say, go get lost with these guys for 2 or 3 hours. Like, he'd have Nobel Prize winners, and I'd be spending the whole day asking questions to Watson and Frick came, and they came without a note or time and a schedule. And Bucky said, you're going to have to go get lost with these guys for 6 hours. Can you imagine? I just read the cover of Time and Newsweek, Watson and Crick, and I get to ask all these questions. So when you ask me, do I know how to ask questions? The answer is yes. Do we want everyone to ask questions? Yeah, because by asking Bucky, will you let me work with you? Because he had no need for me at the time. But then all of a sudden, I was the only guy out of the 7 scientists, 6 other scientists hanging with him that knew enough and had good enough human relations that Bucky would send me with the head of the UN, doctors to be with him. And I'd skip class and I'd be elated, and they'd write me long letters of thanks and saying how much they liked it. And I'd be interviews with the president of the university, and I'd take them through all the coolest stuff going on at our university. And it was just, we've really had an amazing life, but it's all because we learned how to ask. And obviously you've done that profoundly. You couldn't have been a lawyer without asking. And then somehow you asked to say, can I be a transformational coach? Which pretty interesting transition.
Well, yeah, I went from lawyer to headhunter to then having a tech company, then to having a fashion company, and seeing all these different journeys in business. But ultimately, I was a barrister in England, an English barrister, so I was used to court work, and so I was a trial attorney. So it's about interrogating people, basically, and that yeah. Oh, okay.
Trial attorney as well, yeah.
So there you go. So we're used to interrogating people, and then I went into headhunting, and I think the transition you get through into then transformational coaching is an interesting journey. Is that actually we're probably inherently very good at people sharing information with us that they don't want to otherwise share. And that's the key to transformational coaching, is to have people open their heart to you so that you can create that safe space to help them, guide them on the journey towards the healing. And I think not all trial attorneys have the ability to do it from the heart. They've got it to do it from the brain. But I think it's the connection between the two and understanding which space you need to be in. I think that's very important. But I think that the point about you with Buckminster Fuller is when I used to have interns, I would send them off. I had one intern who was 19, 20 years old. I sent her off to India to set up my business in India, right? We're sitting in Sydney, and she's Jewish. And she's like, wow, you want me to go over? So yeah, I want you to go and meet all of these chairmen of these large corporations that are our clients. I want you to go and meet them and tell them what we're going to do in India. But the point is, I wouldn't have done that if I didn't believe that she was curious enough to go and do that. And she wasn't smart enough to go and ask those questions. It doesn't matter whether you're 18 or 80, but and the same with Buckminster. So what he did for you, Mark, is he recognized, well, this person as a human being. And I think what we do as people is you put these people on pedestals, and we forget that they're just human. They're just flesh and blood like everyone else. And that human connection is possible to every person on the planet if they're open to it.
Boy, is that true. We have a great story in the book about, and it just pertains to asking, and how sometimes we just don't have the courage to ask because we think someone is so much bigger than ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so this woman, she was a young woman at the time, her name's Lynn Marquis, and she wanted to go into the nonprofit sector. And so she just threw herself into it. She felt like she was made for that. And she decided to start a nonprofit herself that had to do with sending underprivileged kids to this incredible camp for the summer. So she worked so hard to put this together, and she just needed funding for each of these kids. And she was thrilled to be able to get an appointment with one of the wealthiest women in their city. This was just like a big stroke of luck or effort on her part. So the day she went for that meeting, she said, because she was a young woman at the time, she said she was so nervous that there was no way to hide it. You know, this woman was coming in, she was so big, bigger than life, richer than anything she'd ever encountered before. And she said, in that moment, I knew that I needed to ask her, but there's no way I could hide my nervousness. So I just decided to own it. And she did. So when she sat down with her, she said, I just have to tell you, I'm so nervous right now to have this meeting with you. Mm. And by doing that, you know, the woman was very compassionate. She put her at ease. And so she said, don't worry about it, honey. You know, I'm happy you're here. Let's talk about what you're looking for. What do you want? And she explained what she was doing with the kids and how it was going to go and all of the benefit they were going to receive. And then she said, you know, well, how much money do you need? And she said, well, I need $5,000 because that's what it costs per child. And she said, the woman said, okay, and how many children did you say that you want to send to this camp? And she told her the number. I don't know if it was 200, 250, 300. And the woman said, I'll have a check to you for the whole thing. I'm underwriting the whole thing Monday morning. And she said, you mean the whole thing? You mean $5,000? She said, no, all the children for the whole thing. And so it's just such a beautiful story because we all get intimidated by someone's power, someone's wealth, someone's status, and they're just people, like you said. And we need to have just that courage, get past it, have the courage. Don't be afraid to be a little vulnerable and say, I'm really nervous, you know, just to be with you right now. I'm really in awe of you, or whatever you have to say to be real and genuine and vulnerable. But I think that actually helped open the woman's heart to her, and she more than granted her wish.
And I think, I don't know how you both feel about this, but I mean, it's a beautiful story. I also think that when you are the person that someone is looking up to, or they want to seek guidance from you, actually that we're the ones who should be opening up more than the person coming to us and saying, how can I help you? What do you need from me? Be at ease. Because we see lots of promotion around social media and videos of these cranky people saying, you've got 5 minutes, far away. It's like, doesn't, yes, and you teach people to have elevator pitches and everything else, but it doesn't, if you don't put someone at ease at the first place, that human connection is much harder to pull off, isn't it?
Bingo. And that goes back to your two statements about kindness. You know, if you're intrinsically kind, intrinsically loving, intrinsically heart chakra center open, it works a whole lot better. And the real greats, the geniuses that I've met, and I've met a fair amount of them, like Bucky, you know, they're really heart-centered. And Elon Musk, while I haven't met him, I certainly am a student of his, and a lot of the people that work with him I've met, you know, he is actually heart-centered, but he's got such a good brain that he's willing to confront whoever says, no, Tesla. He says, yes, Tesla, we're opening today in California. Yes, we're going to build the best battery. And because you're enough into science and thinking, he's building a battery. He says it's going to be as little as your thumbnail built out of sand. And except that I was with Bucky all those years, and Bucky would say, you know, he slept 2 hours a night, drive me home and say, pick me up in 2 hours. And I went, at first I thought he was joking, right? I thought nobody can do it, but he shaved a minute a day until he kept asking himself, how do I become a human guinea pig to really solve the problems of the planet? Bucky said, look, every grain of sand has 100 million hours of sunlight in it, and all we got to do is learn how to break it. And evidently Elon Musk must have read Bucky or had the same thought. I never had that kind of thought because I didn't try to break the science on grains of sand. But wouldn't that be cool? Because then we have unlimited energy. Energy creates water, food, abundance. And the goal is, Upanishads, which I'm sure you've read, says out of abundance, he or she took abundance, and still abundance remains. Yeah,
well, the thing is, I'm fascinated. So I'm practical, but as a technologist as well, it fascinates me. So one of my like moonshots, I don't know how I'm going to pull it off, but anyway, it's you would understand this as a scientist, but also both from this experiential human experiences. If you meditate and you have a real connection to the universe, and you can actually, sometimes I used to, when I was going through battling the cancer, so I'd stand out there with my hands up and I'd draw the energy in through my hands from the sun and from the soul and through the skull, and you can physically feel it. It's a overwhelming feeling of euphoria, but and at the beginning it's very strong because the muscles aren't used to it, and then you exercise and it becomes lighter and lighter and lighter. But if we think about it, if we can draw that energy into ourselves, and we can create pretty much anything as a human being, we can heal ourselves and we can create anything. Why can't we use the universal power, the universal energy? And so I've talked to a few people about this, and healers as well, Chinese energy healers, and then you look at the science and say, well, we don't produce enough energy electromagnetically ourselves to do anything. But that's what we're producing. What else if we're drawing it from someone else? I'm not talking about solar energy. I'm talking about universal energy. And the astrophysicist I've had on the show said, well, the thing is, the universal energy really is solar energy because it's the only energy that we experience here. But there's got to be something more to it, to me anyway. How do you feel about that?
I'm going to have an opinion. She'll have an opinion. But first of all, Bucky, the reason Bucky got to be with Einstein is he wrote E equals MC squared for Mrs. Jones. And he went to the publisher and said, look, there's 11 people on the planet that understand Einstein. Kid, your name's not on the list. I don't give a crap that you went to Harvard and you're a doctor and you're an admiral and hama. Bucky says, no, there's one guy who knows. And he said, who's that, wise ass? And he said, Albert. And so they sent it to Albert. 3 weeks later, he gets called from Princeton. I'm sure you probably don't know this story. And he says, young man, you absolutely amassed me. Long story short, Bucky said, E is all the energy of physical universe. M is it congealed at 186,000 miles per second squared. And C is what you're talking about, radiant energy. So what happens is, my assumption, the master teacher, Jesus, and I suspect Buddha and any of the guys that operated at 1,000 on David Hawkins' scale, the power versus force, which I'm sure you probably know, said, hey, look, when you get up that high, you can control that energy, right? That's why Jesus would do a thing, and all the master teachers say, the works I've done, you can do in greater works. And while it's tautological to say, it doesn't make any sense if you're too low in vibration or too low in IQ or too low. And that includes the astrophysicists, and I'm not besmirching any of those ladies and gentlemen you've had on the show. I'm saying, hey, look, this is an elevation of soul consciousness is my definition of what can do it. And that, I'm saying that we are coming into that era that the first time, look, your basic needs are pretty all taken care of. Maslow's hierarchy says you're supposed to get up to self-actualization, but there's above that of beauty and truth and an eclectic, eternal attachment with Atman or full wisdom.
Yeah, I mean, and that's,
of course, this is a great interview.
But you see, if we could harness that, we wouldn't need Elon's batteries. If you could harness that transcendent energy, but does it require? And this is the question, right? So your soul can ascend to that level of consciousness where you feel it, right? It's visceral. It's here. Can we then translate that into something which is physical and useful to somebody else? So you can, as Jesus and Buddha, from a healing and teaching perspective.
Okay, we're doing exploration I love and we love, and it's different than normal. Fun. I hope it doesn't blow the circuits of all your listeners. But
they're blown already. Don't worry about that. They love it. Hopefully they love it.
Yeah.
So early in my life, I'm studying with a guy named Dr. Cherry Parker, and Cherry Parker has come to his house, the world's greatest hand-on healer, Dr. Olga Worrell. And I just happened to be there. It was fortuitous, and Olga Worrell is resting, and this woman comes knocking at his door, and Cherry and I are just talking, and the woman says, look, I'm going to kill myself right in front of you, Dr. Parker, if you don't. Hello there. Now you've got beauty.
She's come to show you the puppy in the middle of the stage.
Oh, I think it makes a much better production if you have a puppy.
Yes, it does.
I've always said that. What's his name?
This is Luna, and she's quarter mini Dachshund cross. What is she?
Maltese.
Dachshund cross Maltese. Dachshund cross Maltese. We've only had her for 2 weeks.
Oh,
Very small.
So cute.
Okay, darling. I'll be out in a minute, okay? Mummy's out. Off you go. I should go the other dog on the bed. Sorry, Crystal, you're in the middle of this. We're in this profound conversation.
The stories about Olga War, all of this lady saying, I'm going to kill myself. I don't get to see Olga War. You're going to have to wait for Parker. And what happened is Olga comes out because she could heal anyone with her hands. And evidently Edgar Casey could do that. There's a few people that have gotten that kind of wisdom, and Olga wrote Healing Hands and all that. And I'm a student of hers and got that juice too. But the fact is, the woman says, well, I'm going to kill myself. So, no. I can telepathically tell you what you're doing. You had an abortion. Your kid is 12 years old. Your kid is on the other side growing fully. You'll get to see her in another 50 years. You're supposed to release it and forgive yourself, because this is 2 parts love, and givingness is the 2 parts to love. So givingness and forgivingness, is the 2 parts to love. So she said, you got to forgive yourself and go back to love. Lady just dropped the knife, left there and left. It was like, I thought, wow. So there's these higher levels of consciousness, and for the most part, people operating at what's called sidereal consciousness, you may have a different definitional term, but can't see it, right? That's why Jesus said, many have eyes and cannot see, many have ears and cannot hear. And the same thing whether you're listening to Buddha or any of the masters of all time say you've got to be at this precipice of consciousness to catch it.
Yeah, it's fast. And I think that one of the struggles with that is that some of the people who are teaching this are teaching it as being a superior being. And from everything I've learned from my Buddhist teaching is that there is always going to be someone who is far more conscious than you will ever be, and have never had to learn it. It's just in their DNA, it's in their soul. They just live and breathe, and boom, that's where they're at. And I think it's important to know that. But the feeling you have when you start through that period of ascension, I've worked with many people who are going through it and they leave everyone behind. And I try to explain to them that you don't need to leave people behind when you're going through this ascension of consciousness, because that denotes a superiority that you can't interact with them anymore. Yes, you want them to be on the same vibrational frequency as you, but you don't have to push people away. You go off and ascend, and then you will plateau, and then you'll go up and you'll plateau again. But that's your own journey. You don't have to remove people as you go through there unless they don't support you. And I think that's one of the dangerous things. But you're talking about like accessing Akashic records, where they can go in and look at people. And I was talking to a guy called Jim Hart from BioCybernaut, who does his neurofeedback training, and he's teaching people to go through the program to get into Akashic records without any mantras. It's brainwave therapy. So to access the theta wave much faster than having to learn how to access Akashic records.
Wow, that
I want to go 2 steps back, and then she can talk to the Akashic records probably more articulately than I can, although I certainly tried to get there a lot of times when I've been in Asia and other places. And our best friend Byron Tucker is a very high Buddhist who studied in India with me when we were respectively student ambassadors to go there and get this eclectic wisdom at everywhere from Madras, the Theosophical Society. But what Buddha said was the day before enlightenment, you chop wood and carry water. And the day after you're enlightened, you chop wood and carry water.
Right.
You're not supposed to say you're a schmuck.
Yes.
One.
Right, and that happens all the time. What you were describing, and we see it when people start to feel like they've become a guru, or an enlightened one. They immediately start to take on this air of self-righteousness, like they have a higher level of right and knowledge than anyone else. And the minute you do that, you've really just like deflated your balloon and descended right back into, because that is complete judgment. I mean, judgment is not a part of it. Judge not that you be not judged. I mean, that's what Jesus said. That's what you don't judge. When you start judging other people, you're just, descending into lower realms. And so just to believe that you are somehow better than other people, you shouldn't even be comparing yourself, because we're all on an individual journey. There's no way we can judge one another's journey or, you know, the relationship that each one of us has with the divine. It may be different. Everyone's special, and there's no way we can try, but none of us can judge what that journey that someone else is on. So we've seen that with people, and Mark knows
sure
what I'm talking about. And it's so funny how they become this holier than now. And honestly, we're on this earth to participate in life. So it's not to remove yourself from life. What are you going to do? We're here, we affect each other. We're all part of this human web, and to try to extricate yourself from that and say, oh no, I'm not part of the human, I'm above it, is to us feels like the wrong path. That is not really truly the path to enlightenment.
And you know, you're absolutely right. And the Dalai Lama says, you want to become a Buddhist, don't come to our monasteries, just practice meditation and mindfulness and be peaceful. You don't have to actually convert to our religion. And I remember my meditation teacher telling me about, he was taken to a very sacred site in Lombok in Indonesia, where they just discovered this very old Buddhist temple. And the local Buddhist monk had come down from Java, from the main island, and was directing traffic basically. And he was very, very angry. And so my teacher's teacher was just saying, just recognize that just because you wear the monk's robes doesn't mean that monks are peaceful.
Oh,
right?
wow.
It's just a robe.
It's just
right?
a robe. It's so true. You're still a human being, and we are all evolving. And to try to judge yourself or compare yourself to someone else is just such folly. You know, only God knows. Only it's a divine relationship between you and someone else, not to judge anybody else's.
And I think that brings us nicely back to the power of asking questions. Is if you ask your question, why am I better than anybody else? And you question yourself, you suddenly realize, I'm not.
That's right.
You're not.
And it brings you back to normality again.
Yeah.
I don't know how long we had, but I'm seeing that I'm looking.
We have another podcast.
You probably got to go. Sure.
I know we do, because once again, this has been amazing, though.
And a joy, because we got to explore stuff, and that's what. So I'll do one final thought about just podcasts, and that is, I think podcasts are the new TV and radio, and I think the people that niche to you or niche to us, are going to get to have more enlightenment, because it's not the same old echo chambers.
No, that's fantastic. I know and what fun we can have and share your experiences with the world through this medium as well. It's fantastic. So I'm very, very grateful to both of you for sharing today. Thank you so much. Where can people find you? Where do they find the book?
So we'd love to stay connected on social media. I'm Crystal Dwyer Hansen, kind of a tongue twister. Of course, Mark Victor Hansen. So, it's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all of the above. We're both on those. Let's stay connected. We love to hear from you. We love to, it's a journey. Let's do it together. That we love people, love to have that connection. The book's on Amazon right now.com, all versions, audio, Kindle, this beautiful hardbound that you can.
That's fantastic. I love that.
Yeah. And we're asking people, we have this great idea, we thought, that we would have this book club discussion, the world's biggest book club discussion. So if you'd like to join us for that, when you buy your book, send us a receipt, the Amazon receipt, to reception@markvictorhansen.com. And we will send you an invitation to our book club discussion. So
That's
we can
fantastic.
talk about how this applies in each of our lives. It'll be fun. It'll be a private group discussion.
Because we think all success comes out of the asking journey to get to your destination, which, if you're alive, you've got a destination. Even though we're sequestered concurrently and temporarily, we think, then you've got a destination, and it's important. And let's get passionately purposeful about it. We want to help you.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. And when we've figured out universal energy and how we can use it, can you let me know, Mark and Crystal?
Yes, absolutely.
By the way, and ditto, and let's stay in touch, because I love your thinking.
Yeah,
right.
Well,
and that's really why we're here. We're here to think, create, and contribute.
Absolutely.
I will indeed. And you stay in touch. Anything I can do for you, just ask. Okay? Take care.
Ditto, Ed. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
My pleasure. Bye.
Bye-bye.